Imagine standing in a palace so grand that every footstep echoes off centuries of history, and yet, somehow, your own voice is the one thing that can't be heard. It started with a knock on a quiet afternoon. Princess Catherine was alone in the blue drawing room, tending to white roses in a vase. The routine gave her peace. After all, the palace could feel hollow when William was away. But the peace shattered the moment Queen Camila stepped in, heels tapping like a metronome of tension. Her tone was gentle, her words were not. She wanted Catherine's sapphire tiara. Not just any tiara. This was the George VI Sapphire, Queen Elizabeth's wedding gift to Catherine. A personal treasure, a symbol of welcome and trust. And Camila wanted to wear it for a state dinner, claiming it would go well with her navy gown. At first, Catherine hesitated, gently offering alternatives. But Camila wasn't asking. She was issuing an order wrapped in pleasantries, all under the name of diplomacy and presenting a united front. It was the kind of pressure that didn't come with yelling. It came cloaked in duty and wrapped in tradition. And Catherine folded. She said yes. The moment the door closed behind Camila, Catherine sank into her chair, the roses beside her suddenly looking sterile and cold. The tiara was technically hers, but in that palace, ownership was an illusion. Within hours, staff knew. Whispers ran through hallways like wildfire. Some said she gave it up with elegance, others said she fought for it, but the only truth that mattered was this: it was gone. Then came the dinner, a glittering event filled with royalty, dignitaries, flashing cameras, and no Catherine. Officially, her absence was chalked up to a scheduling conflict. In reality, she stayed away on purpose. Watching the televised coverage from her private quarters, she saw Camila walk into the room, draped in sapphire brilliance, and the moment stung deeper than she expected. Worse still, the commentator misattributed the tiara, calling it a piece from the late Queen Mother's collection, as if Catherine's wedding gift had never belonged to her at all. History, now rewritten live on camera. That night, she couldn't stop thinking about how fast everything she held dear could be taken, recast, and claimed by someone else. The next day, when William finally returned from his trip, delayed by weather, exhausted but eager to see his wife, he noticed something was off the moment he stepped into her study. She was quiet. Too quiet. And when the truth came out, it hit him like a freight train. The sapphire tiara. Camila wore it with Catherine's reluctant approval. He was furious. But this wasn't just about jewelry. It was about a pattern. A queen who repeatedly took what wasn't hers under the guise of tradition, and a palace that allowed it to happen. William dug deeper, and what he uncovered sent a chill down his spine. This wasn't the first time Camila had made these kinds of requests. There were accessories, dresses, subtle things, each time presented as necessary, each time Catherine complied. But the cost? Catherine's dignity chipped away one polite demand at a time. And that's when William decided enough. He was done watching his wife suffer in silence. He was done pretending these were misunderstandings. He knew what it was now: manipulation. A slow erosion of respect masked as royal protocol. So he prepared for a confrontation, not as a prince, not as an heir, but as a husband. And what followed next would shake the monarchy to its core. William chose the battleground carefully. No aides, no advisors, just him and Queen Camila in a quiet room at Clarence's house. He didn't want spectacle, he wanted clarity. And consequences. Camila entered, her posture regal, her expression smooth as porcelain. She offered a smile. Polished, public, but her eyes flickered with hesitation. William wasn't here to play the royal game. He stayed standing, his arms crossed, the tension radiating off him like heat. "You've crossed a line," he said flatly, "and it ends now." Camila blinked, caught off guard by the bluntness. "William, if this is about the tiara..." "It's not just about the tiara," he cut in. "It's about the way you've treated Catherine. This pattern, this pressure, masked as tradition but fueled by something else entirely." She stiffened. "I've done nothing but uphold the dignity of the crown." "If your wife, my wife," William said, stepping forward, "has been quietly stripped of her dignity, piece by piece, by someone who claims to represent the very institution meant to protect her." Camilla's voice sharpened. I am the queen. With that role comes expectations. Appearances matter. That tiara symbolized unity, legacy, strength. It symbolized my grandmother's love, William snapped. It was given to Catherine as a wedding gift, not as a costume prop for diplomatic flair. The words landed like thunder. Camilla's cheeks flushed. Whether from guilt or rage, it wasn't clear. She reached for the last shield she had, her title. I have precedence, she said coolly. This isn't personal, it's protocol. No, William shot back. It's personal. When you make my wife cry? It's personal when you treat her like a drawer of accessories to pick from at your leisure. And it's very personal when you rewrite the story of a gift my grandmother gave with meaning, just to make yourself look good on camera. For a moment, neither spoke. The air crackled with a tension too thick to cut. Back at Kensington, Catherine sat alone, her fingers brushing the velvet-lined drawer where the tiara had once rested. It had been returned. Quietly. No press release, no photos, just a staff member delivering it with a tight smile and no eye contact. The sapphires still sparkled, but now they carried a weight, a memory of humiliation disguised as duty. Lady Susan stayed close, canceling Catherine's public appearances under the guise of rest. The truth was simpler. Catherine needed space. Her whole identity, once rooted in grace, patience, and silent strength, felt bruised. She had married into a family where silence was survival. But even silence, it seemed, had limits. Inside the palace, the air turned brittle. Staff walked on eggshells. The confrontation between William and Camila had not stayed secret. Walls were thin, words were overheard. Entire departments buzzed with speculation. Some sided with Camila, convinced that William had overstepped. Others whispered that it was long overdue, that finally someone had stood up to the quiet bullying that had been happening under royal noses for years. Then came the ripple. Charles summoned them both. The meeting took place at Buckingham Palace in the Regency Room. Gilded ceilings, heavy drapes, a room that made even monarchs feel small. Charles sat between his son and his wife, his face pale with fatigue. The king, a man torn between legacy and love, looked older than he had in years. This ends today, he said, his voice low but final. William was prepared. He laid it all out, methodically, like a lawyer delivering a closing argument. Incidents, dates, patterns. Each request Camila had made under the name of duty. Each time Catherine had given in, not because she wanted to, but because she felt she had no choice. Camila stayed composed, but her jaw tightened. She spoke of tradition, optics, diplomacy. She didn't flinch, but her voice lacked its usual luster. Then Charles did something unexpected. He broke script. The sapphire tiara, he said slowly, was my mother's gift to Catherine, a personal gift, not part of the crown collection. That single line changed everything. Camila looked as if someone had pulled the ground from beneath her. She opened her mouth to object, but Charles raised a hand. From this point forward, he said, all personal gifts, especially from the sovereign, are to remain personal property. No exceptions, no requests, no reinterpretation. Silence followed. William held his breath, and Charles added, an apology is in order. Camila didn't speak, not immediately, but under the weight of her husband's stare and the unspoken judgment in the room, she nodded once. I regret any distress caused, she said. The words were thin, brittle, and barely enough to pass as sincere, but the moment was sealed. The tiara had already been returned. But something else had shifted, something far bigger. The invisible power structure inside the palace, the unspoken hierarchy between titles and trust, and most of all, the line that William had drawn. Not for protocol, not for politics, for love, for Catherine. The public never saw the confrontation, but they felt the tremor. Royal reporters couldn't name it, but they circled it like sharks around a splash. Headlines danced around Catherine's absence from key events. Photos of Camila in the sapphire tiara were quietly pulled from palace press releases. Then, just as suddenly, Catherine reappeared, poised, radiant, and wearing the matching sapphire earrings, as if nothing had happened. But inside the palace, everything had changed. William's stand didn't just defend his wife, it fractured the long-standing code of silence that had protected the crown's inner politics for generations. Staff noticed the difference. Where Catherine once absorbed subtle indignities with a smile, she now carried herself with firmer resolve. Camilla's reach had boundaries now, and everyone knew who had drawn them. Even the tiara, when it returned, didn't go back to its original place. Catherine had it stored in a separate, secured location, quietly overseen by William's most trusted valet. It wasn't about fear, it was about principle. That piece of jewelry had crossed a line, been used as a pawn, and she would never again allow it to be used that way. Behind closed doors, King Charles tried to restore order. He began holding more private meetings with senior staff, subtly reasserting control. But the damage was done. Whispers of factionalism floated from department to department. Camila's inner circle remained loyal, but there was tension. Smiles tightened, conversations shortened. People who had once casually borrowed the authority of the Queen's name now second-guessed every request. Princess Anne, ever the realist, took the shift in stride. She offered quiet support to William and Catherine, even if she didn't openly take sides. Her opinion, shared only with her closest advisor, was simple. They were bound to push back, eventually. Better it came from William than from the press. Camilla, for her part, maintained public composure. She leaned harder into her duties, smiling wider, shaking more hands, wearing lighter colors. But behind the scenes, she had lost something. Control. William's defiance made it clear she could not bend everyone to her will simply by invoking the crown. And that realization, more than the confrontation itself, rattled her. Weeks later, during a private reception with foreign dignitaries, Catherine emerged in a pale gown and wore the sapphire tiara again. No fanfare, no press leaks, no commentary, but the room noticed. The sapphires blazed beneath the chandelier lights, their deep blue reflecting with quiet authority. Camila stood only feet away, dressed impeccably, a practiced smile frozen on her lips. But her head was bare. No crown, no statement. That night, the story wasn't told in headlines, it was told in body language, in eye contact, in absence, in presence, and everyone who mattered understood what had really happened. The tiara wasn't just back on Catherine's head, it was back where it belonged. From that point on, a new balance settled into place. William's protective stance shifted how the family operated internally. Requests were no longer demands. Catherine's voice was heard in rooms where it used to be bypassed. She hadn't shouted, she hadn't rebelled, but her dignity had drawn its own line in the sand, and William stood in front of it. Behind palace walls, staff quietly dubbed the incident the Sapphire Revolt, half joke, half truth. It became a kind of legend, not for drama, but for what it revealed, that beneath the jewels, behind the protocols, the royal family was still a family, full of pride,